Hi everyone, and welcome to The Sleepy Scientist. I'm really happy you're here. Tonight, we're going to go on a calm and quiet trip to learn something amazing. So get comfy, take a deep breath, and let's enjoy this peaceful science story together. Before we start, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from and what time is it for you right now? If you like relaxing science videos, don't forget to tap the like button. Now let's begin. Long ago, the world fell into a hush. The air turned glassy and slow, and snow covered every breath of land like a soft, endless lullaby. Mountains wore coats of frost so heavy that even the wind forgot its way. Rivers, once fast and laughing, paused mid-song and lay still beneath thick layers of ice. And deep below, where the earth had not yet forgotten how to whisper warmth, life curled in quiet corners and waited. The breath beneath the ice began in silence. There were creatures who knew only the dark, who had never seen the sun. They lived in cracks and pools, in underwater caves where glacial ice met sleeping oceans. These tiny beings, some no larger than a grain of sand, pulsed with life. They were older than the first stories. Their bodies shimmered gently with faint chemicals, glowing like forgotten stars beneath the frozen ceiling above. They didn't run from the cold. Instead, they made it a part of themselves. Above them, the world looked still, but it wasn't. The ice was alive in its own way. It groaned and shifted, creaked and sighed. It grew downward, reaching into valleys and across plains like slow glass fingers. Every snowfall pressed down harder, turning soft powder into heavy ice, and their glaciers began to move, quietly, almost secretly, grinding mountains beneath them, carving valleys, pulling ancient rocks from their beds like pages from an old book. In that age the sun felt far away. When it rose, it brought only a pale silver light. The skies stayed mostly quiet, filled with drifting flakes and slow-moving clouds. Trees stood frozen, their branches like sculpture. Forests waited in stillness. There were no bees buzzing, no birds calling, only the hush of snow landing on snow. The wind, when it came, whispered through canyons of ice like a forgotten language. But even here, even now, there was breath. Inside the bellies of glaciers, bubbles of air had been trapped for thousands of years. They were tiny, quiet pockets of sky from long ago. Each bubble held a story, of warm summers, of green fields, of fires once lit by ancient hands. Scientists today find them and listen closely, pulling memories out of the frozen silence. What did the world breathe before the ice? What songs did the forests sing before they slept? And beneath the ice, in the deep cold where no light reached, life kept moving. Microbes drifted in dark water, feeding on minerals that leaked from the earth. Strange fish with glowing eyes floated silently, never blinking, never rushing. They had no need for sun or seasons. They lived in a rhythm older than time. Everything up there could freeze and vanish, but down here, breath would go on. Sometimes heat would rise from cracks in the seafloor like soft whispers of the earth's forgotten fire. Around these warm places, coral-like creatures would grow, and delicate worms would dance in the faint warmth. They were like small gardens in a land of shadows. No one taught them how to live in the cold. They just did. Life finds its own way to breathe, even in the most frozen corners of the world. The breath beneath the ice is not loud. It doesn't rush or shout. It hums, slowly. It teaches patience. It teaches how to be still and wait, because the world may freeze, but the breath never stops. It simply grows quieter, deeper, until it is almost a song, sung not with voices, but with silence and time. Let's drift deeper now into the quiet world where glaciers once ruled the land. Imagine a vast plain made of ice, stretching beyond sight. It moves, but not like rivers or winds. It creeps inch by inch so slowly you would never see it change if you watched for a day. Yet year after year, this frozen sea shapes the world beneath it. Mountains crumble under its weight. Valleys appear where none existed before. It scrapes the earth like an artist carving stone, slowly revealing what lies hidden beneath. As the ice moved, it didn't travel alone. It carried with it pieces of everything it touched. Bits of stone, seeds from vanished trees, even ancient bones. These things froze in place, locked inside the glacier like secrets in glass. Some would never be seen again. Others would someday melt into the rivers and tell their stories again, but for now they stayed quiet, held in the cold's long memory. Underneath, where the ice met the land, strange things happened. The pressure was so great that the ice began to melt, not fully, just enough to make a slick, hidden river between glacier and ground. That thin layer of water made the glacier slide, whispering across stone like a secret footstep. These hidden flows carved deep paths in the rock. Some became rivers once the ice was gone, others turned into lakes or caves. The frozen world wasn't still. It was always sculpting, always changing, even if no one could see. And above, in the grey sky, snow kept falling. Each flake was a miracle of design, formed in clouds high above, shaped by cold and wind into a pattern never seen before. Billions upon billions of flakes, and no two the same. They drifted down slowly, like tiny letters from the sky, writing silent poems on the land. They covered everything, mountains, forests, even the sea. They buried the world in softness, and still they came. For animals, survival meant learning to become part of the snow. Some grew thick fur that shimmered with warmth. Others turned white, vanishing into the ice. The polar bear, with its heavy paws and powerful muscles, wandered the frozen oceans, hunting for seals at breathing holes in the ice. The muskox stood like ancient statues, their coats layered in wool so thick that not even the fiercest wind could touch their skin. And then there were the wolves, ghost-like, trailing through the endless white, following scents the human nose could never find. But even more wondrous were the tiny survivors, insects that made their own antifreeze, tiny frogs that could freeze solid and then thaw back to life. There were beetles with crystals in their blood, each one a quiet miracle shaped by the cold built to wait. The frozen world did not ask for speed, it asked for stillness, for patience, for endurance, and nature answered in kind. Even trees had their own secret ways. In the short summers, they drank the sun like thirsty travellers. Their leaves shimmered green for only a few months, then fell away to sleep beneath the snow. Roots dug deep, deeper than the frost could reach. Some trees lived hundreds of years this way, growing slowly, rings pressed together so tightly you could barely count them. They measured time not in days or hours, but in winters survived. And humans, yes, even we were there. Our ancestors wore furs stitched by hand and made fires that crackled against the long dark. They learned to follow the herds, to find shelter in caves, to carve tools from bone and stone. They painted pictures on cave walls, animals in motion, hands outlined in ash and ochre. Even then, in the deepest cold, we dreamed, we imagined, we remembered. Around the fires they told stories of stars, of spirits in the snow, of warmth returning. Hope lived in those stories, flickering like firelight even in the longest night. The breath beneath the ice wasn't just in the earth. It lived in animals, in people, in trees. It lived in the quiet waiting. It lived in the way light touched snow, how sound moved slowly through the cold air. It was everywhere, soft and unseen, a rhythm that pulsed beneath everything frozen. Some say that this breath is still with us, in the glaciers that remain, in the ice cores drilled deep into Antarctica. We study them now like time machines, pulling up ancient air and listening for what it tells us. The world was colder then, slower, but it was not dead. It was full of quiet life moving gently beneath the surface, waiting not to escape the cold but to survive it, to become one with it. And in that stillness, the earth remembered itself. It hummed a soft lullaby, one that echoed through the rocks, through the roots, through every living thing that dared to breathe beneath the ice. Now imagine the quiet beginning to fade. The cold still clings, but something has changed. The sun lingers a little longer each day, its light sliding across the snow in warmer colours. Ice begins to weep at the edges, a drip here, a soft trickle there. It is not loud, it does not rush, but it is sure. The world, after so many winters, begins to shift. This is not a sudden thaw. The frozen breath has known how to wait, and now it exhales slowly. Lakes reappear where there was only snow. Rivers stretch out like sleepy animals, yawning as they wake. Glaciers, which once ruled the land, begin to retreat. Step by slow step, they leave behind wide valleys, polished smooth and carved like soft clay. They do not vanish in anger. They simply bow and back away, having finished their work. The creatures that lived through the freeze now move with careful steps. Some return to old paths long buried in ice. Others explore new spaces, fresh and bright under a warming sky. Birds come back first. They paint the air with their songs, calling out to each other across vast fields of melting snow. Their wings flash with colours that seem too bright for such a pale world, like dreams returning to daylight. And the trees, silent watchers through endless winters, begin to stir. Their roots feel the thaw, and sap begins to flow like slow music through their trunks. Buds appear on their branches, hesitant but brave. A few green shoots rise through the last of the snow. They are small, but they are strong. It is their time again. They never forgot the warmth. They only waited. Where glaciers once pressed down with crushing weight, the earth now breathes deeper. Wildflowers bloom in valleys that were once oceans of ice. New rivers carve soft paths through the soil. Animals drink from streams that sparkle like spilled stars. Life moves back in, not with noise or chaos, but gently, almost shyly, like waking from a long dream. Even the ice that remains begins to change. It still holds its breath deep inside. But now scientists visit these places, digging carefully, listening closely. They pull long cylinders of ice from the earth, ice that holds tiny bubbles of ancient air, each bubble a whisper from the past. They study the layers, counting the seasons like pages in a book. Each tells a story of volcanoes, of forests, of quiet years and stormy ones. And through these stories we learn not just about the past, but about ourselves. We begin to understand how everything is connected, how even in the deepest freeze life held on, how even the coldest silence had its own song. We see how the earth can be both fierce and gentle, both still and always changing. We see that breath never truly stops, it only softens. And perhaps the most beautiful truth of all is this: the breath beneath the ice was never gone. It was always there, flowing in the dark, glowing softly, waiting. It waited through ages of frost and silence. It waited through storms and snow and endless night. It waited not to escape the cold, but to remind us that life does not disappear when the world is quiet. It deepens, it listens, it dreams. Now, as the earth warms again, the breath rises to the surface. We feel it in spring winds. We see it in rivers that once lay hidden. We hear it in birdsong, in the crunch of melting snow, in the hush between raindrops. The breath has become a voice, telling us stories of patience, of endurance, of a quiet strength. And if we listen carefully, beneath all the noise of our modern lives, we can still hear it. The slow, ancient song of the frozen world. It hums in the roots of trees. It echoes in the mountains. It dances in the mist. It reminds us that even in the coldest places there is warmth. Even in silence there is life. And even beneath the ice, something beautiful is always waiting to breathe again. Long before cities lit the skies, there was only the quiet shimmer of stars. On the coldest nights, they burned clear and sharp, watching the earth from above like ancient lanterns. Below, snow covered the land in a pale glow, catching the starlight and holding it close. Each flake that touched the ground carried with it a secret glint from the heavens. In those nights, it seemed as if the sky had fallen softly to earth, one crystal at a time. Snow is more than frozen water. It is a kind of message. Each flake begins as a speck of dust, tiny, invisible, drifting high in the clouds. It may come from a volcano, or a forest fire, or the breath of an animal, or the smoke of a distant land. And around this speck, water vapour clings. The cold begins to shape it, folding it again and again in a quiet dance of symmetry. Slowly, it becomes a snowflake, each arm mirroring the others, forming a pattern so perfect it seems impossible. No two are the same. Every flake is its own brief miracle. When the sky lets them fall, they drift for miles, silent and slow. Some take minutes to reach the ground. Others float for hours. They twist in the wind, catching moonlight shimmering like tiny falling stars. In the darkest parts of winter, people would look up and see them swirling, and they would wonder, what messages do they carry? What stories come with them? There are stories buried in the snow. As it gathers, layer upon layer, it captures pieces of the world, bits of pollen, fragments of ash, traces of air from times long gone. Over years, this snow turns to ice, pressed by its own weight into solid memory. In glaciers and ice sheets, These layers stay locked away for thousands of years. Scientists dig deep, pulling out long, clear cylinders of ice that hold whispers of forgotten skies. Inside, they find dust from deserts, soot from ancient fires, even radioactive particles from distant stars that exploded long before humans were born. The snow does not forget. It remembers every sky it fell from. It holds in its crystals a record of air and silence and starlight. And sometimes, on very rare nights, when the sky is clear and the world is still, you can almost feel it, the quiet link between the stars above and the snow below, a thread of frozen light connecting past and present, sky and soil. In the coldest places, where snow never melts, this connection grows deeper. Antarctica and Greenland wear thick cloaks of ice made from millions of winters. Here, the snow has fallen every year, undisturbed, building layer after layer, like pages in a book. The deeper you go, the older the snow becomes. At the bottom, you touch air that last moved through leaves and lungs over 100,000 years ago. You touch time itself, and yet, even in its stillness, snow is not lifeless. It changes the world it lands on. It keeps the soil warm beneath it like a blanket. It reflects sunlight, cooling the earth. It feeds rivers when it melts, giving life to forests, farms, and people. It sculpts the land, carving shapes with its weight and movement. Snow is not just decoration. It is power, moving quietly, shaping silently, changing everything it touches. And somewhere inside every flake, no matter how small, is the memory of sky. The pattern it carries was shaped by wind and cold and distance. Some snow begins its journey near the edge of space, where the air is thin and the temperatures are colder than any place on Earth. From there it falls into thicker clouds, picks up more water, and finally descends to Earth, each moment carving its form a little further. To walk through falling snow is to walk through stories. They land on your coat, your eyelashes, your hands. They melt without a sound, but not before they've shared their light. They were part of the sky just moments ago, and now they are here, on the ground, in your palm, disappearing gently. The snow teaches us how to hold something precious for only a second, and to still be grateful for the touch. Let us wander further into the story of snow and the stars it once carried. In the stillness of ancient winters, long before human cities lit up the dark, the snow was a mirror to the sky. People looked up and saw constellations, then looked down and saw those same lights caught in the white blanket below. The world above and the world beneath felt joined. It was as if the stars had come down to rest, one flake at a time upon the earth. And within that snow, the sky left gifts, tiny grains of cosmic dust, older than our sun. These grains floated through space for millions of years, born in dying stars drifting silently between worlds. Some were pulled into our atmosphere, where they became the centre of a snowflake. These star-born seeds fell gently through our clouds, gathering ice into perfect hexagons, before resting softly on the surface of the world. Every winter the universe touched the earth in quiet, shimmering ways. Today we search for those ancient specks. Scientists collect snow from untouched places and melt it carefully, filtering out the tiniest remains. And sometimes in that melted snow they find fragments that came from beyond the solar system, bits of rock that predate the Earth itself. The snow, so silent and soft, carries pieces of forever. It links us not only to the sky, but to the birth of everything. The people who lived in snow-covered lands long ago sensed this mystery. They didn't have telescopes or satellites, but they had eyes and hearts and wonder. They told stories of sky people and snow spirits. They believed the snow carried messages, blessings, sometimes warnings. Some said each flake was a breath of the wind, shaped into form. Others said it was the dust of stars falling back home. To them, snow was never just weather. It was a visit from the sky. Even animals seemed to understand the snow's rhythm. The Arctic fox, white as the moon, moved like a shadow across the fields. It listened to the snow, ears turned toward the faint rustle of a mouse beneath the surface. The snow was thick but not silent. Beneath it, life continued. Tiny tunnels stretched through the snowpack, warm with body heat, lined with fur and dry grass. Voles and shrews made hidden cities down there, unseen but busy. Above them, owls drifted through the sky, wings wide and silent, scanning the white below for movement. In this cold world, everyone listened. And the snow itself listened too. It caught sound in strange ways. A voice carried far on a snowy field, but a footstep barely whispered. In the woods, snow wrapped the trees in silence, muffling even the wind. It turned the world into a slow-motion dream, and in that dream, time bent. You could walk for hours and feel like you were standing still. You could stop and feel like the world moved around you. Sometimes snow lit up with colour. When it fell under moonlight, it gleamed with silver. When the sun touched it just right, it sparkled like fields of diamonds. In some places, snow turned blue in shadow or pink with the sunset, and in the far north, where the night stretched for weeks, the sky would dance with green fire, the aurora, weaving light across the stars. That light too landed on the snow, colouring it softly, as if the sky was painting the earth with its own breath. And what happens when snow melts? It does not vanish. It becomes water, flowing, rising, joining rivers. The stars once caught in its crystals now move through streams, into lakes, into oceans. They become part of the clouds again, waiting for another season, another fall. The journey of a snowflake does not end. It becomes part of the endless cycle, always changing form, always returning. And the memory remains. In old snow we find layers of past years, each one a quiet record of the air, the wind, the world. A warm year leaves behind a soft band. A volcano far away might dust the snow with ash dark and thin. Even the breath of machines, cars, factories, cities, leaves a trace caught in the snow like a fingerprint. The stars are not the only things snow carries. It holds our story too. And so, when you step into falling snow, you step into history. You walk through stories written in crystal, shaped by time, whispered from the sky. You might catch a flake on your glove and see it melt, but for that brief second, you are holding the pattern of wind, the dust of space, the rhythm of the world. And somewhere inside you, a small part of the universe recognizes itself, not in thunder or fire, but in this soft, cold, perfect hush. As the snow deepens, so does its story. The world beneath its surface is not lifeless but resting. Like a song paused between notes, it waits for the next rise of sound. Beneath the thick white blanket, seeds lie curled in the dark soil. Tiny roots reach down, sensing warmth that will someday return. They do not rush, they do not cry out, they wait. And in that waiting, there is a kind of grace, for snow does not just silence the world, it teaches it to listen. The animals too know this rhythm. Bears sleep through the long winter, their hearts slowing, their breath soft. Deep in dens dug into hillsides or hollow trees, they curl into themselves, keeping the warmth that remains. Their dreams echo the hush outside. In those dreams, rivers still run, berries still grow, cubs still play. It is not an escape, but a remembering, a quiet rehearsal for the spring that will come, and in the snow above them, wind moves in soft swirls, reshaping drifts and dunes like slow-moving waves across a white sea. The sky, watching from above, holds its own patience. Clouds roll in and out, carrying more snowflakes to fall. Sometimes they bring storms thick and heavy, turning the world a soft grey. Other times the clouds part and stars return, sharp and cold and endless, and when they do, the snow responds. It reflects that light, scattering it across fields and hills and rooftops. It glows faintly, as if the stars themselves had come to rest on earth for a while. You can stand outside on such a night and feel surrounded not by emptiness, but by light. In some places, where the cold is deepest, the snow stays for months. It layers itself again and again, pressing down with gentle weight, and when it finally begins to melt, it does so with care. Icicles form at the edges of roofs, dripping in slow rhythm. Snowbanks sink gradually, their shapes softening like memory fading. The melt feeds streams, wakes sleeping creeks, and fills ponds that have waited quietly under ice. Every drop is a return, a journey back into motion. This return is not just water flowing downhill, it is life resuming its pace. It is geese flying overhead once more, calling out across the sky. It is shoots breaking through the wet soil, reaching for sunlight. It is frogs singing from puddles, children splashing in thawed paths, wind carrying the smell of mud and moss instead of frost. The world turns, not with a shout, but with a breath. It inhales deeply and begins again. But something of the snow always remains. Even after it melts, even after the last flake has vanished into the soil or sky, the memory stays behind. In the trees, in the rivers, in the quiet corners of thought. Snow teaches stillness. It teaches softness. It teaches how to fall without fear, to land gently, to become part of something larger. It reminds us that even the smallest shapes, fragile, fleeting, nearly invisible, can reflect the stars. And when we think of it, when we close our eyes and remember that soundless white world, we carry it inside us. We carry the feeling of stepping into snow for the first time, the hush that surrounds us, the chill that brushes our skin, the beauty of light scattered through silence. We remember the way snow covers everything equally, hill and house, tree and stone, new and old, making all things quiet and new again. The snow that carried the stars is gone now, melted into rivers, slipped into oceans, risen into the clouds again. But its journey is not finished. It will fall once more, somewhere, sometime, bringing with it a new shape, a new story, a new moment of stillness. And when it does, the stars will be watching, shining down as they always have, their light caught once more in the dance of ice and sky. So if you ever find yourself standing in snowfall, remember, you are standing in a story, one that began before you and one that will continue after. You are part of a moment that stretches from the stars above to the soil beneath your feet, a moment that says, be still, be quiet, be here. This is the snow that carried the stars, and now, for just a little while, it is carrying you. There is a silence that only glaciers know. It is not the absence of sound, but the presence of something older, something that stretches back through ages before words, before people, before even forests knew how to grow. It is the deep, endless hush of slow movement across time. Glaciers do not rush. They do not rise and fall like waves or swirl like storms. They move with patience so complete that their steps are measured in centuries. Yet they move, always. A glacier begins as snow. Layer upon layer it falls and settles, each new flake pressing the one before it deeper into the earth. Over time, the weight becomes too much. The snow changes. It tightens, hardens, becomes ice. Not just any ice, but something dense and blue and glowing softly from within. It forms deep cracks, long and quiet, like breath held too long. The glacier is born, not with a flash, but with a long sigh. At first, it stays still like a mountain, but deep inside, it is learning to move. Tiny shifts begin. The weight of the top presses down, the base grows slick with hidden meltwater. And then, one day, the glacier begins to glide. Not far, not fast, maybe just an inch in a day, but enough to matter, enough to change the land. Glaciers shape everything they touch. They are quiet sculptors of stone. As they move, they gather rocks, pull boulders from cliffs, grind valleys into the earth. Mountains bow under their weight. Forests are swallowed. Rivers are redirected. What seems eternal, the ridges, the hills, the very shape of the land, become soft clay in their hands. And still, they say nothing. They do not announce their arrival. They leave behind silence, wide plains, deep lakes, new earth. Beneath the glacier there is another world, dark, cold, secret. Here ice presses against stone with such force that water forms, even in the freeze. That water runs beneath the glacier in winding streams, carving tunnels through the bedrock. It carries tiny grains of rock, grinding more as it goes, leaving behind silt so fine it feels like dust. These hidden rivers sing a song no one hears, except the glacier and the earth. Above, the surface seems still. Snow gathers, smooth and unbroken. Winds blow across it, leaving soft ripples and ridges. On some days, the glacier groans. A deep crack echoes across the ice like a giant whispering in sleep. Crevasses open deep, narrow cuts into the body of the glacier. Glowing blue from within, they are not empty. They hold cold like a memory. Step near one, and you feel the breath of the winters. In places, glaciers reach the sea. There, they become ice shelves, floating on the ocean like enormous white cliffs. At the edges, pieces break off with a sound like thunder, falling into the water as newborn icebergs. These bergs drift away, silent and slow, carrying with them stories from the mountains, now floating toward the sun. And what of the sky? It watches. The stars shine down on the glacier like sentinels. The moonlight paints the ice silver. And in the darkest times of winter, when the sun barely touches the horizon, the aurora dances overhead, spilling green and violet light across the frozen fields. The glacier glows back, holding the light without ever warming. It is both mirror and memory. The silence of ancient glaciers is not empty. It is full of weight and history. It holds the breath of 10,000 winters. It holds the footprints of mammoths, now long gone. It holds pollen from flowers that once bloomed, dust from volcanoes that once roared, ash from fires no one remembers. It holds all of this not in words but in layers, pressed deep into its heart, hidden in its cold. To stand upon a glacier is to stand on time, not the ticking kind, not the clock on the wall, but time as the earth knows it, slow, heavy, patient. You feel it beneath your boots. You hear it in the hush of the wind. You see it in the endless stretch of white and blue and light. You feel very small and very held. The glacier does not ask to be known. It does not call out. But if you listen, truly listen, you will feel its story. A story of movement without hurry, of silence that speaks, of a world that changes not with noise but with the soft, steady pull of cold across stone. Let's drift deeper into the frozen breath of glaciers. Beneath their silence lies a memory that the earth itself cannot forget. These colossal rivers of ice, formed from the gentle fall of snow and compressed over lifetimes, are not just frozen landscapes. They are books made of ice, written not with ink, but with air and time and pressure. Each layer of compacted snow is a page. Each page holds a season. Each season whispers something about the sky, the winds, the warmth, the world that was. Glaciers remember things we've never seen. They hold bubbles of ancient air locked away before cities, before agriculture, before the wheel turned. Inside these bubbles are the breaths of mammoths, the sighs of ancient forests, the distant ashes of faraway eruptions. Scientists drill into the ice, pull out these frozen columns and read them. They look at the tiny bubbles and say, this is what the Earth was like 50,000 years ago. This was the temperature. This was the amount of light. This was the dust in the wind. The ice becomes a story, slow, pure, deep. And the farther down you go, the quieter the story becomes. The glacier begins to speak in pauses, in gaps, in frozen hesitations. The deep ice is darker, denser, pressed by the weight of centuries. It creaks underfoot, not with fear, but with memory. You can almost feel the long sleep of winter still humming through it. You can almost hear the world turning in slow motion. And even in that slowness, change is always happening. The glacier is never truly still. It shifts with pressure. It flows like stone dreaming of being water. It creaks and groans, sending vibrations through the ground like messages in an ancient language. Glaciers split open, not from anger, but from patience finally moving. Huge blocks of ice shear away from cliff faces and fall into the sea. The splash is a shout in the silence. It is not violence, it is release. Some of these glaciers meet the ocean, and when they do, they shape the sea. The fresh water from their melt changes currents. It cools the surrounding water, influencing storms and seasons thousands of miles away. The cold, blue heart of a glacier beating far from shore can stir hurricanes, shift winds, and whisper to clouds. The reach of a glacier is not just its size, but its breath. It breathes slowly, deeply into the rhythms of the planet. And below the ice, in those cold, dark chambers where sunlight never reaches, life stirs. There are microbes that feast on the minerals carried in meltwater, some glowing softly, others moving sluggishly through the icy tunnels. They do not fear the cold. It is their home. They thrive where others would sleep or die. And their presence reminds us that life is not only in the warmth, life is in the waiting, life is in the depths. The people who lived near glaciers long ago knew this silence. They did not have words for it, but they respected it. They called glaciers spirits, mountains that moved when no one looked. They told stories of sleeping giants, of cold gods, of ice that remembered. Some feared them, some prayed to them, or all watched them, because glaciers could give life, melted into streams for drinking, rivers for fishing, snow for growing, but they could also take. A sudden break, a flood of ice and water, a valley swallowed. Glaciers moved slowly, but their touch was strong. And so people listened. They watched the lines on the mountains where the glacier had once rested. They marked how far it came each year. They read the changes, subtle and quiet, as a kind of warning or blessing. The glacier was a teacher, not of words, but of time. It taught them that the land was not fixed, that stone could flow, that the cold was not always cruel, it was sometimes wise. To walk along the edge of a glacier is to feel the breath of the deep past. The air is sharper there, cleaner, filled with the scent of snow and stone. You hear the distant crack of the moving ice like a faraway drum. You see the blue depths where light bends and twists into shadow. The wind stings your face, but it also clears your thoughts. The glacier does not shout, but it speaks. And if you are still enough, you might hear it say, "This is how the world remembers," not with noise, with stillness. And even now, as many glaciers melt and shrink, they continue to shape the world. They leave behind lakes where none existed. They carve paths that will someday be forests. They drop boulders in fields, gifts from places far away. Even in their retreat, glaciers do not vanish. They become part of the next story. Their silence echoes forward, reshaping land, reshaping memory. The past flows into the future, slow and cold and glowing. The glacier, in its final moments, does not vanish. It fades. It melts not in a rush, but in a long, steady exhale. From the edges inward, its form softens. What was once sharp becomes rounded. What once towered begins to sink. But even as it disappears, it gives. Water trickles from its base, clear and cold, threading its way down slopes that the glacier itself carved long ago. These streams grow into rivers, and the rivers into lakes, and with each drop the glacier feeds a world it will no longer see. The land it leaves behind is raw. Stones lie scattered where ice once pressed them. Hills appear where there was once only flatness. The earth is carved with long, smooth valleys, curved lines like the strokes of an invisible brush. New soil, rich and silty, lies bare beneath the sun. In time, plants will return, small mosses first, then grasses, then trees. Life follows the retreat of ice like a careful shadow. What once seemed barren will bloom again, shaped by the silence that came before. Yet the glacier does not truly die. It becomes memory. It lives on in the patterns of the land, in the shape of the rivers, in the bones of the valleys. It lives in the air, cooled by the melt. It lives in the hearts of mountains, in the deep scars left on rock. It lives in the stories told by the water as it carries minerals down to the sea. Even the clouds remember. The ocean exhales that melt back into the sky, and the cycle continues. Snow will fall again someday, perhaps here, perhaps elsewhere, but it will fall. And in the minds of those who watch, the glacier leaves something more. A lesson not shouted but whispered. It teaches that change can be slow and still powerful, that silence can move mountains, that time is not the enemy, but a patient sculptor, shaping all things with invisible hands. The glacier never asked to be noticed. It never asked to be understood. It simply was. It moved, it breathed, it held, and then it let go. In some parts of the world, glaciers still hold strong. In others, they are shrinking faster now, faster than before. The warmth creeps in not with fire, but with steady heat. The ice thins, the cracks widen, and the old blue glow dims. And though the glacier does not speak in human words, it gives us warnings. Not in fear, but in remembrance. It says, "I have seen many changes. I have survived great storms. But now, something is different." We study these changes. We measure the melt, chart the retreat, record the sounds of breaking ice. We fly satellites over them, take pictures from space. We write reports. We hold conferences. And yet beneath all the numbers and maps, there is something deeper, a quiet mourning, a recognition of what is being lost. Not just water, not just ice, but memory. A way of knowing the world through stillness. But even in loss, there is learning. The glaciers remind us to slow down, to pay attention, to listen, to feel the ground beneath us, carved long ago by forces that never needed to shout. They remind us that everything we stand on was once part of something else, that the world is always becoming, always changing, always carrying the past in its bones. And so, when you walk where a glacier once was, you do not walk alone. You walk on a trail left by time. You walk in the footprints of cold giants, You walk with silence at your side. The air may be warmer now, the sky may be brighter, but if you stop and breathe and listen, you might still hear it. A low hum beneath your feet, a slow song in the hills. The glacier is still there in a way, not in ice but in shape, not in sound but in memory. It is in the cold water that touches your skin, in the smooth stones by the riverbank, in the sharp air that carries echoes. The glacier does not ask to be remembered, but it is, every day by the world it helped create, every day by those who pause long enough to hear the stillness speak. The silence of ancient glaciers was never empty. It was full of knowing, and even now, long after the ice has gone, its quiet breath moves through the land, through rivers, through valleys, through us. There was a time when the sky itself seemed frozen, when light travelled not in bursts or brilliance, but in slow, gentle waves that swept across the ice-covered earth. In those long, cold epochs, sunlight touched the world softly, like a whisper trying not to wake a sleeping child. The snow didn't glitter sharply then. It glowed, as if the light was trapped inside each flake, pulsing slowly in time with the rhythm of the seasons. When light enters snow, it doesn't just bounce back, it sinks, it bends, it scatters. It passes through layer upon layer of tiny ice crystals, breaking apart like a beam through glass, refracting until its colours are split into silence. Blue travels deepest. That's why glaciers glow from within. That soft blue light, like the breath of the sky caught inside the cold. It's not just colour, it's memory. It's sunlight slowed down by time and frozen air. In the ancient skies of the Ice Age, the sun rarely climbed high. It hovered near the horizon, casting long shadows across the frozen fields. Even at noon, the light was angled and soft, stretching warmth across the snow but never melting it. The air, filled with tiny ice crystals, caught the light and turned it into halos around the sun. On especially cold mornings, two false suns would appear on either side of the real one. Sundogs, glowing twins born of ice and sunlight. The sky became a theatre of illusions, painted in soft fire. Above the tundra and glaciers, this frozen sky held more than the sun. The stars on clear nights burned with a clarity we rarely see now. Without dust, without smoke, without city light, they hung low and sharp, and the moon, pale and wide, spilled light onto the snow until night and day blurred into one long silver dream. Sometimes, when the cold was sharpest and the sky just right, auroras would dance across the darkness, ribbons of green and pink that shimmered like breath held in colour. The people who lived under these skies knew the language of light. They read the sky like a book. They watched the way the sun moved, the way shadows stretched, the way the horizon glowed before dawn. They knew when a storm was coming by the colour of the air. They knew how to walk by starlight alone, how to find direction from the moon. Light to them was not just something to see by. It was a guide, a map, a presence, and snow played its own part. It caught the light, held it, reflected it back gently. On cloudless days, snowfields became mirrors, glowing with a light that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. You could walk for hours and never find a shadow. The brightness was so complete it filled your eyes and your mind. Some called it snow blindness, but others called it dreaming. A kind of waking sleep where the world became light and silence and breath. Even the ice in the sky changed the way light moved. High above, cirrus clouds made of frozen crystals caught the sun and bent it into arcs and pillars. Sometimes these clouds formed bright columns of light that rose from the setting sun, light pillars, tall and glowing as if the sun had grown a stem of ice and reached upward. These were not ordinary sunsets. They were quiet miracles, happening in places where the cold shaped the sky into something else entirely. Below, light crept into the ice itself. As glaciers moved and cracked, sunlight filtered down into crevasses, lighting the inside of the earth like underwater caves. Blue light reached furthest, turning the ice into glowing walls of quiet fire. It was like walking through the lungs of a sleeping planet, where each breath glowed softly and time lost its edges. And then there was the warmth hidden in the light. Even in the coldest winters, sunlight carried heat. Not enough to melt the world, but enough to keep life waiting beneath the snow. Enough to remind seeds in the soil that someday the sun would rise high again. Enough to pull animals from hibernation, slowly and gently, like a song waking a sleeper. This was not the light of summer, sharp, fast and loud. This was the light of ice and patience. The light that moved slowly curved gently and painted the sky with softness. It did not rush, it drifted, it settled, and in doing so it turned the frozen world into a dream made of glow and stillness. In those ancient winters, the sky was not something distant. It was close. It leaned down and kissed the snow. It wrapped the world in colour and cold, and in that wrapping, it gave something precious, a way to see not with eyes but with wonder. Let's move deeper now into the gentle dance between cold and light. When the sky turned pale and the land lay frozen for seasons at a time, light became more than brightness. It became texture, emotion, rhythm. The way it moved through the air changed how everything felt. Even shadows were slower. The light itself was hushed, as if it too had learned to whisper in the silence of snow. The frozen atmosphere didn't just let light pass through, it played with it. Ice crystals suspended in the high clouds acted like prisms, bending rays in subtle ways. The sky seemed to breathe with shifting light. Sometimes faint rainbows appeared in the middle of winter, not after rain, but because of the cold. They weren't arcs of colour like we see in summer. They were faint horizontal lines of pink and green stretched across the sky, circumhorizontal arcs. They were rare, fleeting, and only visible when everything aligned just right. But when they came, the world stopped for a moment. Even the wind seemed to watch. Far above, in the highest parts of the sky, light found its most mysterious dance partner, the polar stratospheric clouds. These clouds formed only in the coldest conditions, high in the polar night, where temperatures dipped so low that water and nitric acid could freeze together. They shimmered with soft, glowing colours, like the inside of a seashell. As the sun skimmed the edge of the world, its rays lit these clouds from below, setting them alight in brilliant pastels. Scientists called it scattering. Poets called it skyfire. Down on Earth, everything responded to the way light moved. Animals changed their rhythms. Some, like the ptarmigan, turned completely white, becoming part of the snow itself. Others, like the snowshoe hare, shifted their coats in harmony with the light. Brown in the summer when shadows were short and strong, white in the winter when light stretched long and cold across the land. Their survival depended not just on warmth or food, but on blending into the way the light moved. The trees too listened. In the far north, spruce and fir stood still all winter, but their needles caught every possible ray. When the sun tilted lower and lower, the trees tilted slightly too, branches adjusting to catch just enough of the weak golden light to stay alive. Even in frozen silence, they turned toward the sun, not in hope, but in quiet discipline. They knew the light would return. They only needed to wait. Humans, wrapped in furs and firelight, also lived by the rhythm of the frozen sky. In long winters, they marked time not by clocks, but by the changing tone of the daylight. They watched how light fell on the snowdrifts, how long the blue shadows stretched, how soon the stars returned after dusk. They burned lamps through the polar night, feeding them with oil made from whales or seals. And in those flames, they saw the same colours as in the sky, orange and gold and flickers of green. The fire was not just warmth, it was a small piece of the sky they could hold. Sometimes light came not just from the sun or stars, but from the land itself. Bioluminescent algae glowed beneath the ice in certain seas, lighting up in soft pulses when touched by waves or fish. Even the snow in some rare places seemed to shine faintly with static energy or light bent by crystals within it. People once thought the snow had spirits. They weren't wrong. The world, when cold, seems more alive with light than at any other time, and when the thaw finally came, the light changed once more. It grew stronger, more direct. Shadows shortened, colours sharpened. The snow began to melt in the shimmering sheets, and pools of water formed mirrors on the ground. Trees glittered with drops that sparkled like glass. Ice cracked open, and inside those cracks, sunlight slid down into deep wells, warming spaces that hadn't seen light in 100 days. The glaciers, once glowing only within a blue, began to shine with surface gold. And yet, even in melting, the memory of the frozen light remained. It lingered in reflections, in the soft brightness of early spring, in the glitter of leftover frost on a morning leaf. The world did not forget how to glow slowly. It carried the frozen light forward, quietly, and this slow light, shaped by cold, held something that summer light never could. The wisdom of waiting, the grace of stillness, the kind of beauty that arrives when nothing else moves. It was not made for hurry or noise. It was made for looking, for noticing, for being present. And so, the light that moved through frozen skies did not just illuminate the land, it taught it. It shaped the snow, the trees, the animals, the people. It shaped how time was felt, how silence was heard, how beauty was seen. It entered every part of the frozen world, not to dazzle, but to soften, to slow and to stay. As spring neared and the earth began to shift, the frozen skies held on to the last of their pale glow. Light that had once moved like a secret across white plains now grew stronger, bolder, but never careless. Even in its growing strength there was still memory in the way it moved, of soft dawns, of low suns, of stars sharp against black skies. The frozen light, though melting, left a trace in everything it touched. It didn't vanish. It became part of the land. The snow, touched by this light, began to weep quietly, not with storms, but with small, steady drips that carved their way down icicles, across stones, and into the soil. The world drank this thaw slowly. Patches of earth appeared, dark and damp, scattered like islands in a sea of white. In these soft pools of melted snow, sunlight danced in circles, catching on pebbles and tiny blades of early grass. It was no longer just light, it was invitation. Creatures stirred, birds returned first, gliding through skies still cold but brighter now. They wove between the thinning clouds, their wings casting short shadows over glimmering drifts. Their songs, once muted by wind and frost, rang clearer. Their feathers caught the sunlight, flashing with colours that winter had hidden. It was as though the skies, still holding the breath of snow, finally released their music. In the forests, the snow thinned further. Branches heavy with frost lifted slowly, freed from the weight of months. Meltwater ran down bark in thin lines, soaking the roots below. In the stillness of these woods, light sifted through the trees in beams. It painted the trunks in golden stripes and glowed in droplets clinging to pine needles. The forest no longer slept. It watched, quietly, as the light traced its fingers across everything, and beneath the thaw, rivers began to wake. Frozen streams cracked open, letting water run freely again. These waters carried the sky with them, the reflection of clouds, the shimmer of stars caught in the surface, the blue that once lit the heart of glaciers. Every ripple carried away a piece of the frozen past, not as loss, but as movement. The world, once held in place by cold and silence, flowed again. The sky, too, began to change. The sun rose higher, staying longer, its rays cutting through the last curtains of cloud and mist. But something remained in its glow, a softness, a memory of all the days it had stayed low and distant. Even at full strength, the light now seemed wiser. It did not blaze, it warmed. It grew with patience, like the flowers just beginning to press through the melting snow. And in the minds of those who walked this world, something lingered too. The memory of how light moved through cold places, how it bent around frost and drifted across snow, how it filled the night, not with brightness but with depth. People remembered. They remembered the pale colours of auroras in the dark sky, the halo around the sun at midday, the silver gleam of moonlight on snow. These were not just sights, they were feelings, they were moments of stillness that held entire lifetimes of thought. So even as summer approached and the days lengthened, the light carried a shadow of what came before, a memory of frozen breath and glowing skies. It passed through windows, touching the walls of quiet homes. It warmed the stones where animals rested. It brightened the water in wells and lakes, each drop once part of the snow that saw the stars. And perhaps this is how the story of light through frozen skies truly ends. Not with fire, but with continuity. Not with fading, but with becoming. The light that once moved slowly over snow now moves through leaves, through water, through eyes that look up and remember how stillness once felt. It reminds us that light doesn't only shine, it transforms, it listens, it waits. And in the coldest times, when everything else goes quiet, light keeps momentum moving, not to rush us forward, but to guide us home, through frost, through shadow, through time. It shows us that even the slowest glow can shape the world forever. Beneath the thick, unbroken ice, far from the warmth of sun or sky, the ocean slept, not in stillness, but in quiet rhythm, slow and deep. Above them, glaciers stretched wide across the land, and snow fell endlessly from grey clouds. But under all that cold there was water, vast and waiting. It moved in shadows, it whispered through salt and silence. It was the world's oldest lullaby, humming in the dark. These sleeping oceans were not lifeless. They were full of hidden motion, of unseen breath. Beneath the frozen ceilings, under shelves of ice as thick as mountains, water pulsed through narrow channels. These were subglacial seas, places no light touched, where even the concept of surface and sky felt like a distant dream. And yet, life stirred here. Microscopic organisms drifted gently, surviving on minerals that seeped from beneath the seabed. Some glowed faintly, like stars lost in a watery sky. Others fed quietly in darkness, needing no light to be alive. The pressure in these places was immense. Ice pressed down from above, the weight of entire continents resting upon the sea. But water, unlike stone, does not break easily. It flows, it bends, it carries the memory of shape and the memory of warmth. And so, even trapped beneath kilometers of ice, the ocean continued its slow, dreaming circulation. In some parts of the world, this ocean touched the land through long, hidden tunnels carved by ancient melt. Lakes formed beneath glaciers, dark, cold, and sealed away for millions of years. Lake Vostok in Antarctica is one such place, a secret ocean beneath 4 kilometers of ice, undisturbed since before humans walked the earth. There, in the dark, scientists believe life exists, simple, quiet, resilient. Creatures that have never seen light, never known sky, but still live, still breathe, still wait. Above these sleeping seas, the ice was not silent. It groaned, it shifted, it creaked under its own weight. These sounds echoed faintly into the water below, like distant thunder through stone. The ocean heard them. It responded in waves that touched the shorelines hidden far beneath. These waves didn't crash. They rocked, gently like the sway of a cradle. Time moved slowly here. Minutes felt like hours. Years passed without rush. And even though these waters were hidden, they mattered. They shaped the movement of glaciers above. The warmth from the ocean melted the base of the ice sheet, making it slippery, helping it slide. As the ice moved, it carved valleys, shaped coasts, sculpted the earth itself, all from the soft encouragement of the sleeping ocean below. The salt in these seas held history. It carried traces of ancient rivers, dissolved stone, and the bodies of tiny life forms long gone. It carried minerals from deep inside the planet, lifted through cracks in the seabed. And sometimes it carried heat, rising through hydrothermal vents like breath from the Earth's lungs. Around these vents, strange creatures flourished. Giant tube worms, blind crabs, glowing shrimp. They built entire ecosystems in the dark, never needing the sun. To the world above, this ocean was invisible. But to the Earth itself it was essential. It balanced temperatures, shaped climates, influenced wind and weather. It did all this without noise, without light, without being seen. It moved through currents shaped by the moon, pulled by gravity in ancient patterns that never stopped. And in its quiet, the ocean kept secrets. Fossils settled gently on its floor, untouched by scavengers. Ice-encased gases waited, preserved in stillness. Dust from distant continents drifted down through cracks in the glacier, settling into sediment like forgotten letters. The ocean collected these things without judgment. It simply held them. Sometimes pieces of this sleeping ocean would escape. A crack in the ice, a break in the shelf, water gushed into the open sea, waking into motion. These floods were quiet disasters, carving deep scars into the land. But even then, the ocean did not rage. It poured out slowly, as if remembering the path it once took. Then it settled again, waiting, watching. Above, people walked on snow and ice, never knowing the sea below their feet. They built stations, took measurements, drilled deep. They marvelled at the silence, at the endless white, but beneath them the ocean whispered. Not in words, but in rhythm, not in voice, but in motion. It sang of ancient tides, of lost warmth, of life that endures through darkness. And in that song there was no hurry, no fear, only the steady belief that even in the deepest cold, even beneath the heaviest ice, the world still breathes. The ocean still dreams. Let us sink deeper now into the silence beneath the ice, where the sleeping oceans move with secrets no one has yet fully heard. These waters do not roar or crash, they glide. Their rhythm is slower than thought, older than memory. They flow not with chaos, but with purpose, guided by the subtle pull of temperature, the quiet breath of the moon, and the unseen stirrings of the planet's core. Here in this hidden world, time is not kept by clocks, but by currents that may take 1,000 years to complete their path. Imagine an ocean that never sees sunlight, that stretches under a ceiling of ancient ice untouched by wind or sky. Here the water is dense and cold, pressing against the walls of ice that form its home. The edges are lined with slushy crystal brine, and pockets of saltier, heavier water sink slowly, pulling other waters behind them. Above, the ice holds firm, thick with weight. Yet even in that stillness, there is movement, slow and vast and uninterrupted. The ocean shifts like breath in a sleeping body. Some of these waters slip between cracks and crevasses, brushing against rock that hasn't been touched by open air in millions of years. As the water moves across the seafloor, it gathers the minerals, iron, manganese, sulfur, and carries them forward, feeding life in the blackest corners of the deep. There are no plants here, no roots or leaves, but there is life. Bacteria thrive in the mineral-rich darkness, turning a rock into energy in ways no sunlight could ever teach. They are tiny, patient, resilient, and around them ecosystems grow in soft silence. Above, great shelves of ice float on the sea's surface. They are part glacier, part ocean, part sky. These ice shelves act as lids, sealing in the sleeping sea. But when cracks form, long, slow splits across the shelf surface, light finds its way in. Sunlight spills through the cracks, touching the water below for the first time in decades or centuries. The water glows, not brightly but gently, like it's remembering something. Light and cold mix, and where they meet, something new begins. In those moments, plankton wake, tiny drifting organisms that bloom in bursts when light and nutrients arrive together. A single shaft of light can feed an entire chain of life. Microscopic plants, small crustaceans, fish, seals, even whales. This is the paradox of the frozen ocean. The colder it is, the more life it hides. Not because cold creates life, but because it preserves it, protects it, allows it to build quietly. And when these creatures die, their bodies sink. Not in grief, but in return. They fall through the water like snow, a slow, silent storm called marine snow. Tiny flakes of carbon, calcium and memory drift to the bottom and settle into the sediment, where they may lie undisturbed for thousands of years. The ocean floor becomes a library of soft remains, a history written in shells and silence. Sometimes this sleeping ocean speaks. Earthquakes under the ice can send a tremor through the sea. A glacier carving far above can send ripples that echo across the basin. The ocean hears them all. Its surface barely moves, but deep inside, waves bounce back and forth, carrying news of the shifting world above. These are not storms. They are reminders. The ocean remembers everything. In places where the ice thins just enough, scientists lower machines into the black. They listen with hydrophones. They see with light that doesn't scatter. They find strange creatures. Jellyfish like drifting glass, fish with translucent skin and blood that does not freeze, tentacled beings that move like forgotten dreams. Some of them are slow, impossibly slow, pulsing once every few minutes. They are not built for speed, they are built for staying. And yet, for all this patience, the sleeping ocean is not passive. It is a sculptor. Its smooth stone carries sediment, shapes the coastline from below. Its movement influences the tides far away, controls the upwelling of nutrients that feed entire ecosystems. When it shifts slightly, the effects are felt across the globe, in rainfall, in temperature, in the flowering of forests. The world breathes with it, even when it cannot see it. The sleeping ocean below is not a secret because it hides. It is a secret because we do not yet know how to listen. But it is always there, beneath the footsteps of explorers, beneath the weight of glaciers, beneath the stillness of snow. It flows in silence, it speaks in motion, and it dreams, not of change but of continuation. And perhaps that is its most powerful lesson, that beneath all things there is a depth we rarely see, a place where time is long, where light is rare, where life is quiet but unshakable. The ocean beneath the ice sleeps, yes, but in its sleep, it shapes the world. As the seasons turned and the sun began to linger longer on the horizon, something shifted in the deep. The ice above, long unmoved, began to soften around the edges. Cracks widened slowly, light filtered farther than it had in years, and beneath it all the sleeping ocean stirred, not in panic, not in urgency, but in quiet acknowledgement. Its rest was never meant to last forever. It had always known this moment would come, and so it moved, not with haste but with grace. The melt began at the borders, where warmer currents touched the underside of the ice shelves. These currents didn't rush in. They crept, bringing with them stories from the open sea, saltier water, more oxygen, subtle hints of change. The cold fresh water from the melting ice mixed with the warm salt water from beyond, creating layers in the ocean like pages in a book. Some water stayed cold and sank, some stayed light and rose. This dance of density and temperature set new currents in motion, swirling like suns on the silent wheels beneath the surface. And still, life moved. Plankton bloomed in sudden bursts when sunlight broke through. Tiny green specks filled the water, feeding krill, who fed fish, who fed seals and whales and birds returning from distant migrations. The frozen ocean, once a realm of darkness and sleep, became a cradle of light, not loud or chaotic, just steady, growing, alive. With the warming came new sounds. Ice carved from the shelves, plunging into the sea with cracks like thunder. The ocean accepted each piece with a hiss and a ripple. Waves spread outward, touching shores miles away. These were not destructive waves, they were messages. The ocean was awake now, and it had begun to speak. Glaciers that had once fed the sleeping seas with slow melt now released water more quickly. Rivers formed beneath them, racing through hidden tunnels and bursting out into fjords. These waters were cold and fresh, carrying silt that painted the sea pale green. As they entered the ocean, they mixed and stirred and spread nutrients that had slept at the bottom for ages. These nutrients woke up too, and with them, entire ecosystems blossomed in quiet explosion. Yet even in this awakening, the ocean remained gentle. It did not forget how to sleep. It did not forget how to listen. It remembered the rhythm of ice, the taste of mineral, the weight of silence. And it carried that memory forward, even as the ice thinned and the skies grew brighter. The ocean, once trapped beneath kilometers of frost, became again a mirror of the sky. And as clouds passed overhead, so too did the reflections of stars and sun and moon pass across its surface, just as they once did before the ice ever came. But not all changes were soft. Some ice shelves collapsed completely, sending vast slabs into the sea. Where once there had been a ceiling, now there was open sky. The sleeping ocean did not protest. It widened, it adjusted, it continued to hold life in its depths, yet it remembered the loss. In places once stable, the water grew turbulent, patterns shifted, species moved or vanished. The ocean, though vast, felt the difference. It could absorb much, but even its patience had limits. And so scientists listened more closely. They placed sensors deep beneath the shelves. They tracked salinity, temperature, motion. They mapped the paths of warm currents and traced the signs of fresh melt. They collected cores from the seabed, unlocking stories told in mud and microfossils. Each layer revealed something new: an old flood, a vanished species, a 1,000-year storm. The sleeping ocean, though slow to speak, had kept everything. Even now, as some parts of it begin to warm, others remain untouched. Lakes beneath Antarctica lie sealed, still hidden under mountains of ice. No light reaches them, no human has touched their water. But even there, microbes persist, adapted to darkness and pressure. They are part of the ocean too, its oldest sleepers, its smallest storytellers. And they wait still, not for rescue but for recognition. In the end, the sleeping ocean beneath the ice was never truly asleep. It moved in dreams, currents that carried memory, silence that shaped life, breath that filled the planet from beneath. It taught that rest is not weakness, that stillness is not absence, that life, even in the coldest and darkest places, will always find a way to begin again. Now, as the earth warms and the ice retreats, we are invited to remember that stillness, to protect what we've barely begun to understand, to move not in panic, but in deep awareness. The ocean beneath the ice is rising to meet us, not as a threat, but as a teacher. Its waters, once hidden, now flow in plain sight, asking only that we listen. And if we do, if we stand still long enough by its shores, we may hear it. The echo of ancient breath, the pulse of sleeping tides, the voice of a world that never stopped dreaming. In the heart of the long winter, when the air stood still and the world seemed wrapped in silver silence, the trees slept. Not like animals, curled and warm, their sleep was different. It was deep, still, full of memory and waiting. Beneath the snow their roots reached downward into cold soil where frost touched stone and darkness held its breath. Above their branches stretched skyward, bare and unmoving, catching only the quiet fall of snow and the soft whisper of distant wind. But even in sleep they dreamed. Each tree, though frozen in place, remembered spring. It was written in the shape of its limbs, in the grooves of its bark, in the hidden buds curled tight against the cold. Trees did not dream with images like we do. Their dreams were slower, deeper, made of light remembered, of warmth once felt, of rain on leaves and birdsong in the air. These memories hummed quietly in the wood, pulsing slowly like a heartbeat beneath the bark. Inside their trunks sap stopped flowing. The cells that once danced with sugars and water had gone still, but not dead. It was a practiced stillness, honed over countless winters. The trees knew how to survive. Their outer layers thickened, sealed tight against the dry, cracking cold. Their leaves, if not already fallen, turned crisp and dark like paper forgotten in an attic. And still they waited. Beneath the forest floor, roots sprawled like networks of memory, slow and patient. They wrapped around stones, brushed against the roots of neighbours, and held fast in soil that seemed to sleep too. Fungi moved slowly through this underworld, threading between roots, sharing nutrients, sending signals. The trees talked to each other, not with sound, but with molecules, with electric pulses too small to hear. One tree warned another, the cold is deep this year. Another sent back reassurance, the thaw will come again. Above, the snow piled high, sometimes taller than a man, sometimes taller than a bear standing upright. But the trees didn't bend under it. They stood, waiting, as they had through hundreds of winters. 1,000 flakes landed, then 1,000 more, but the trees were not crushed. Their bones were strong with memory. They had bent in storms before. They had survived ice, fire, wind, and time. There were many kinds of trees in this dreaming forest. Pines with needles like threads of silver, oaks with branches thick as arms, birches with pale bark peeling like old paper. Each dreamed differently. The pine held fast to its needles, turning them inward against the frost. The oak let its branches darken and harden, conserving strength. The birch whispered along its bark, a soft hiss in the cold wind telling itself stories of warmer days. Even in the coldest night, when stars burned sharp overhead and not a sound stirred, the trees felt the change. It came first as a deepening in the roots, a subtle loosening in the frozen soil, then a longer brightness in the sky, as if the sun hesitated a moment longer each day. The trees could not open their eyes, but they felt the light. They absorbed it in their bark, in the soft tips of their branches. It seeped in slowly, a promise that winter would not last forever. The forest was quiet, but not empty. Snowshoe hares leapt between trunks, their white coats almost invisible. Foxes trotted silently, leaving narrow tracks. Owls perched in the bare branches, waiting, their eyes wide and ancient. Sometimes a gust of wind would send snow tumbling from a branch, and for a moment the forest would sparkle. Then the silence would return, soft as a breath. Humans, if they walked through these woods, did so with care. They stepped lightly, speaking in whispers, as if they too feared waking something sacred. Their breath steamed in the cold, their boots sank into the snow, but the trees paid no mind. They were listening for something older, the slow turning of the earth, the deep hum of thaw, the rising of sap that would come, not yet, but soon. And so they dreamed. Of spring rains falling in silver sheets, of leaves unfurling like green flames, of bees dancing in blossoms, of children laughing beneath their branches, of roots stretching deeper, of light lingering longer. These dreams were not fantasies, they were memory, they were future. They were the song that trees sing without sound, the story they carry in every ring. Even frozen, even leafless, the trees were alive with waiting, Not asleep, not awake, but in a place between. In winter they rested not in despair, but in belief. That light would return, that warmth would find them, that what sleeps today will grow again tomorrow. Let us walk softly now through this winter forest, where each tree holds a breath it will not release until the moment is right. The snow crunches beneath your feet, muffled by its depth. All around the trunks stand like silent pillars, casting long blue shadows across the white. But if you could listen not with ears, but with your heart, you might feel it. The quiet conversation of trees, the language of waiting, the music of patience. Beneath the ground, life has not ended, it has slowed. The soil, though cold, still holds warmth deep down, and the roots stretch toward it. They do not move quickly, but they do move. Some roots send out tiny threads, just a few millimeters at a time, pressing into cracks in the earth, searching for moisture, for nutrients. Others pull gently from the frozen layers, sipping water trapped in the frost. It is not enough to grow, but it is enough to endure. In this sleeping forest, time passes differently. The days are short, the light slanted and low, but the trees do not count time in hours. They feel it in degrees, in the depth of the frost, in the way the snow sits on their limbs. A deep freeze tells them to hold still. A softer wind whispers that change is near. And when the first true thaw begins, they will know, not with suddenness, but with certainty, as if the memory of 1,000 springs awoke within them all at once. The buds, though invisible to most eyes, are already formed. Tucked tightly against each branch, they wait like unopened letters. Inside, the instructions for leaves, flowers, and seeds sleep in perfect silence. Each bud holds a map, a future. They are the smallest containers of hope in the forest, and yet they carry everything a tree needs to begin again. When the sun rises a little earlier and lingers a little longer, the bark begins to warm. The difference is tiny, just a degree or two, but for the tree it is enough. Deep within the trunk the sap starts to move, slowly at first, then with more purpose. It slides through xylem and phloem, carrying sugars from root to tip. This is not just nourishment, it is memory flowing. The tree remembers how to grow. The sap is its song, its signal that the dream is nearly over. Animals begin to return. Squirrels, long quiet in their nests, emerge and race along the limbs, searching for food they buried in autumn. Deer nibble at bark and lichen. Woodpeckers hammer at the trunks, echoing through the trees like a drum. And all around, birds begin to sing. Not the full chorus of spring, but the first few notes, cautious and hopeful. Still snow covers the forest floor. Still the air holds its chill, but change is coming. You can see it in the way the sunlight moves, how it sparkles on the snow as if the ice itself were beginning to let go. You can feel it in the breeze, no longer biting, now only cool. You can hear it in the dripping of icicles, in the trickle of meltwater finding its path down the bark. Children bundled in scarves and mittens begin to play beneath the trees. They make snowmen, chase each other, fall back into drifts and laugh. Their voices rise into the branches, waking something old and joyful. The trees have heard this before. They remember the sound of footsteps and laughter and stories told beneath their limbs. They welcome it, even in sleep. The forest is a book written in circles. Each year adds a new ring, a new chapter, quietly pressed into the wood. These rings tell stories of drought and flood, of fire and frost, of rich summers and long winters, and the tree carries all of them, never forgetting, never rushing. It grows in time with the world, and when the true spring comes, and it always does, it will not arrive all at once. The snow will melt in patches, the buds will swell slowly, then burst into green. Flowers will appear, tiny, shy at first, then bold. Bees will return dancing among petals. The forest, once grey and white, will turn gold and green, humming with life. But in these moments before that awakening, there is something sacred. The in-between, the final stretch of winter, where silence meets anticipation, where trees still dream but begin to stir, where the forest feels full not of emptiness but of what is about to be. The trees, still bare, stretch toward the sky, not in need, but in welcome. They are ready, they have waited, and soon they will rise into song. Now, as the earth leans slowly toward the sun, something shifts in the quiet heart of the forest. The snow, once so deep and undisturbed, begins to sink. The air feels different, not yet warm, but gentler, as if winter itself has sighed and loosened its hold. The trees, though still bare, are no longer only waiting. They are listening more closely now. The light is changing, the soil softens, and the dreams that lived in stillness begin to rise toward waking. The buds, once hard and tight, swell with a quiet urgency. Inside them, cells divide, leaves begin to unfurl, not in full bloom yet, but with intention. It's a slow bloom, measured, careful, ancient. Each unfolding is a memory repeated. This is how it begins. This is how life returns, not with noise, but with breath. With each degree of warmth, each touch of rain, the tree leans closer to becoming once more what it was and what it has always known it could be. Along the branches, tiny green sparks appear, new growth against old wood. These first leaves are fragile, so thin they tremble in the wind. But they are brave. They stretch toward the sky with no guarantee, only trust. And the forest responds. The ground, long hidden beneath snow, darkens with moisture. Patches of moss wake up first, turning vivid green in the filtered sunlight. Shoots emerge, poking through leaf litter, reaching towards something they've never seen, but somehow still remember. Birds, more numerous now, flit between the branches. Their calls are sharper, more insistent. Not just survival now, something more joyful, more daring. Nests are woven with care in the crooks of branches, hidden but held. The trees hold them, as they always have, offering shelter not from obligation, but from a quiet bond shared over countless seasons. Life is returning in layers, in feathers, in fur, in leaf, in breeze. Sap runs freely now, thick and sweet. It surges through the trunks, connecting root to crown. In maple trees, this flow becomes a gift, dripping into tin buckets, gathered by human hands who know the rhythm of this time. Sap becomes syrup. The tree in its waking gives again, not because it must, but because that is its way. And as warmth settles in, the forest fills with scent. The air no longer carries only frost and pine. Now it holds the damp smell of soil, the faint perfume of opening blossoms, the musk of animals moving through undergrowth. These smells rise and mingle, telling a story older than memory. The world is alive again. For the trees, this moment is not sudden. It is the result of months of silence. Their roots have waited, their trunks have endured, their buds have dreamed. And now, all at once and yet slowly, they bloom. Each leaf that opens is a signal, each flower a message. They are here, they have returned, they never truly left. Children return to play in their shade, now softer and dappled with green. Parents rest beneath their branches. Birds sing lullabies from hidden perches. The forest becomes a home again, not just to animals, but to memory, to laughter, to time. The trees do not speak in the words, but their branches sway with a kind of welcome, a kind of calm. They know how to hold space, they know how to endure, and when storms come, and they always do, the trees do not panic. They bend, they let the wind pass through them, let the rain wash over them. They lose some leaves, they lose some limbs, but they do not forget who they are. Their strength is not in resistance, but in rhythm, in knowing when to grow, when to rest, when to dream, and when to reach. As the season continues, as summer follows spring, the forest becomes fuller, louder, brighter. But something of winter remains, in the rings of the trees, in the stories carried by sap, in the stillness that lives beneath the surface. The dream is never fully gone. It becomes part of the living, a quiet song beneath the louder one. And as autumn returns and the leaves turn gold and fall once more, the trees will prepare again. They will remember this spring just as they remembered the last. And when the snow begins to fall, they will not mourn, they will rest, they will hold still, and they will dream again. Because trees do not fear the cold, they understand it. They have made peace with waiting. They know that every winter ends, that every stillness leads to song, that in every frozen breath a green promise sleeps, waiting for the light. There was a time when the world burned, long before the age of snow. Volcanoes spilled fire from the earth's belly, and molten rock carved rivers across the land. The sky shimmered with ash, and the air was thick with heat and smoke. But the earth does not stay in one mood forever. Slowly, over millions of years, the fires dimmed, the air cooled, the clouds thickened, and the cold crept in, not as an enemy but as a slow breath, wrapping the earth in quiet. The fire did not vanish. It sank. It hid. It waited beneath the ice. Even now, beneath some of the coldest, whitest places on Earth, fire remains. Not the flame that dances in the open air, but the deep heat of the planet's core. It presses upward through cracks in the crust, through slow-moving rock, through ancient stone. In places like Iceland and Antarctica, this warmth touches the bottom of glaciers, melting them from beneath. Not all at once, just enough to create small lakes, quiet flows, secret rivers. The ice above these places looks still, but it listens. It knows what sleeps below. This buried fire comes in many forms. Sometimes it rises as geothermal heat, warming pockets of land even in the deepest winter. Elsewhere, it escapes as volcanic eruptions, rare but powerful, sending black ash into white skies, turning snow to steam, ice to flood. But more often it simply lingers. It moves with the patience of magma, spreading through the stone like a forgotten memory. It does not burn, it hums. Beneath the glaciers, this warmth makes space for life. Lakes sealed beneath the ice sheets for thousands of years remain liquid, held in that fragile balance between freezing air above and gentle heat below. Inside, microorganisms thrive, tiny, ancient, untouched by light. They drift through the water, feeding on minerals, glowing faintly in the dark. Around hydrothermal vents, whole ecosystems gather. Tube worms, blind fish, strange corals that feed on heat instead of sunlight. These creatures are not afraid of the dark, they are born from it. The ice above holds this warmth in place like a shell. It insulates the heat, trapping it just enough to keep the balance. And the fire in return keeps the ice moving. Glaciers flow because of it. Crevasses open because of it. Valleys are carved, cliffs broken, rivers born. Without the fire, the ice would lock in place, the world would stop shifting. But with it, the land continues to breathe. In the far north, people have always known about this fire. They built homes near hot springs, warmed by Earth's hidden breath. They told stories of mountain spirits, of gods sleeping beneath the snow, their breath warming the caves and waters. Some said the fire was alive, dreaming in the dark. Others believed it was the soul of the world, resting but never gone. And when steam rose from the earth on a freezing day, they knew the fire still waited, still watched. Even in the coldest deserts of Antarctica, volcanoes rise. Mount Erebus, always covered in snow, holds a lake of molten lava in its throat. It bubbles and glows, never freezing, even when the air around it bites like knives. It is a contradiction made real, a flame surrounded by frost. And around it, scientists study the balance. They ask how life survives in such extremes. They ask what it means to burn in silence. Sometimes, deep within the ice sheets, gas bubbles form. These pockets, held for centuries, contain methane and carbon dioxide, remnants of ancient life, trapped by snow that fell before memory. When the ice melts, these gases escape. They rise into the air, invisible but powerful, the breath of the past released into the future. Some of this gas once came from forests that burned, from animals that breathed, from fires that once danced across the earth. Now that fire sleeps in frozen form, waiting for the ice to let it go. And in this way, ice becomes more than just cold. It becomes memory. It becomes a keeper of warmth. Each snowflake that falls on a volcano, each glacier that grows over hot stone, holds a contradiction inside it, that heat and cold are not always enemies. Sometimes they are partners. One shapes the other. One holds the other in balance. The fire trapped in ice is not a threat. It is a rhythm, a reminder that even in the quietest places, something powerful stirs. It does not rage, it does not demand, it waits, and in that waiting it teaches. It teaches that warmth can live beneath silence, that movement can come from stillness, that even in a world of snow and shadow, the heart of the earth still glows. Beneath the thick weight of ancient ice, where light does not reach and sound does not echo, the fire continues to breathe. It moves with the deep patience of the earth itself, rising not in flames but in whispers of warmth. Between the layers of frozen stone, between the shifting plates of the crust, the molten core stirs gently. This fire has been burning since the planet was born. It does not flicker. It flows, slow, steady, unseen. But even buried beneath mountains of snow and miles of frozen silence, its presence is felt. You can feel it in the way the glaciers move. Though they seem still to the watching eye, their motion depends on warmth far below. At their base, just above the crust, the pressure of the overlying ice and the steady warmth of the planet's heart melt a thin layer. This water becomes a slide, a soft path that allows the glacier to creep forward. Without the heat, the ice would freeze solid to the bedrock. But because of the fire, the ice flows. Because of the warmth, the world reshapes itself. In some places, this fire pushes higher. It finds cracks, old faults, places where stone once split. There it rises in plumes and fountains beneath the sea, forming hydrothermal vents. These vents, shaped like chimneys, pour out dark, mineral-rich water that is hotter than boiling, yet does not boil, because the pressure of the deep holds everything tight. Around these vents, life blossoms in the shadows, not delicate or fragile, but alien and strong. Worms with no eyes, crabs with no pigment, bacteria that feast on sulfur. Creatures that do not need light to live, only heat. Some scientists believe these places are the closest thing we have to the beginning of life itself. Before the sun warmed the first forests, before the skies turned blue, life may have started here, in the dark near the fire, beneath the pressure and silence. It did not begin in brightness, but in warmth. Not in song, but in breath. And that breath continues still, exhaled slowly by the vents, rising into the deep like forgotten lullabies. On land, the story is no less mysterious. In Iceland, steam rises from snow-covered fields, and rivers run hot through valleys of frost. In Yellowstone, geysers burst from the earth in rhythms shaped by fire and time. These places are not interruptions, they are reminders. The fire is always there, just beneath the surface. It speaks in steam and stone, in water that hisses and ground that trembles. It reminds us that the quietest landscapes often hold the fiercest heat. Antarctica too holds this fire. Beneath its endless white there is a string of volcanoes, silent, buried, alive. Some of them have not erupted in thousands of years. Others breathe faintly, melting the ice from below, creating secret lakes that no sunlight has ever touched. These lakes remain liquid because of warmth alone. They are cradles of life, protected by ice, sustained by fire. They are not stories from the past. They are real, living now, under our feet. The trees that grow near these geothermal places know the warmth. They root themselves in soil heated from below. Even in winter, their sap stirs a little sooner. The animals come too, drawn to the unfrozen ground, the warmth rising from hidden springs. Foxes curl into warm earth. Birds splash in steamy pools. Elk paw at the ground, exposing chutes no snow could cover. The fire becomes a quiet refuge, a hidden promise that the cold cannot touch everything. But the fire does not only give, it warns. Sometimes it wakes too fast. Sometimes it rises with fury, cracking the earth, sending ash into the sky, melting glaciers in a rush that floods valleys. The ice remembers these moments. Trapped in layers of snow are signs of past eruptions, black bands of ash, sharp chemicals frozen in time. They are pages in the great book of the earth, moments when the fire could not wait. And still, the ice returns. It falls again. It covers the wound. It wraps the world once more in silence, because the balance always restores itself. Fire flares. Ice cools. One reshapes the other, over and over, in cycles that stretch beyond memory. The planet knows this rhythm. It has danced to it for billions of years. For us, it is a lesson of opposites, of contrasts that coexist, of heat sleeping inside cold, of movement beneath stillness. The fire trapped in ice is not lost. It is not gone. It is held. And the ice, though cold and vast, is not a cage. It is a guardian. It does not smother the fire. It shelters it. So that when the time is right, the warmth can rise again. Not in destruction, but in renewal. Because fire does not only destroy, it clears, it carves, it begins. And when it lives within ice, it teaches us to look more closely at the quiet, to listen more deeply to the stillness, and to remember that even in the calmest places, something powerful may be waiting, not to burn, but to awaken. Now imagine the moment when the ice begins to let go. Not in anger, not in collapse, but in quiet surrender. The seasons shift, the sun lingers longer each day, and warmth returns not just from above, but from below. The fire trapped in ice has not pushed or fought. It has waited. It has held its heat in silence. And now, as the cold retreats, it stretches gently into the open. Snow melts at the edges first. Small pools form where sunlight and geothermal warmth meet. These puddles steam in the crisp air, their surfaces rippling with the breath of hidden heat. The ground begins to soften, and from beneath rocks and roots the earth exhales. It smells of minerals, of ash, of time. It is a scent both ancient and new, like the memory of something once lost, now waking in the light. Glaciers, those giants of ice, feel it too. Their undersides grow slick with meltwater. They slide more freely across the bedrock, pulled forward by gravity, guided by warmth. Some break apart, sending bergs into the sea. Others thin slowly, breathing out gases they've held for millennia. Inside these gases are stories of fires burned, forests lost, creatures long extinct. The fire trapped in ice was never just heat. It was history. In volcanic regions, the change is even more dramatic. Geysers erupt more often. Steam rises through cracks in the snow like signals from the deep. Hot springs swell and spill over. The ground pulses with low rhythmic tremors, the heartbeat of the earth made visible. Mosses and lichens are the first to return, curling around warm stones, glowing green in a world still pale with frost. In time, larger plants follow, their roots drawn to the warmth. Where once there was only silence, now there is song. Animals sense it too. They gather near warm places, drawn not only by heat but by the life it brings. Insects rise in shimmering clouds. Birds return to nest in the thawed forests. Deer and elk graze along the borders of the melt. In the rivers fed by both fire and ice, fish spawn, their scales catching light from above and warmth from below. The world, once frozen still, now moves with gentle urgency. And yet, in this renewal, the balance remains fragile. Too much fire too fast and the ice cannot hold. Glaciers vanish, oceans rise, weather shifts. The very warmth that gives life begins to reshape it in ways too sudden for the slow-moving rhythms of the natural world. The ice melts, yes, but not always softly. Sometimes it floods, sometimes it breaks. The fire, long trapped, becomes unbound. Still not all is lost. The earth has always changed. The fire has always tested the ice, and the ice has always softened the fire. Together they have sculpted every mountain, every valley, every stream. They have written the shape of every continent, and they will continue to do so. What matters now is how we listen, how we respond to the whispers beneath our feet, to the heat we do not see but always feel. In geothermal fields, people now place their hands to the ground, feeling for warmth. They build homes powered by Earth's heat, drawing comfort from what lies below. In ice cores pulled from the poles, they study the layers of ash and gas, reading the language of long ago fires. And in deep-sea submarines, they visit hydrothermal vents, where life still blooms in darkness, fed only by heat and minerals. The fire is no longer a myth. It is a map, a force, a lesson. And perhaps the most important lesson is this, that opposites are not enemies, that ice and fire, cold and heat, silence and movement can live together, not in conflict but in balance. One cools, one warms, one waits, one moves. And when they meet in harmony, they create something lasting. So the fire remains, even now. It sleeps beneath your feet, it flows in the heart of mountains, it rises through vents and springs, and sometimes it even touches the sky, casting red light into the clouds, sending ash to mix with snow, painting the heavens with warmth. But most days it stays hidden, not because it is weak, but because it is wise. It knows that the strongest forces are those that do not rush, that do not need to be seen to be felt. The fire trapped in ice teaches us to watch more closely, to trust the slow, to respect what waits without demanding. And when you walk across frozen ground, when your breath steams in the air, when the silence around you feels vast and still, know this, there is warmth below, there is movement, there is life. Not all fire burns, some of it breathes, and some of it dreams, wrapped gently in snow, waiting for its moment, not to destroy, but to glow. Time does not always tick in the same way. In most places, it hums along in moments and minutes, in heartbeats and shadows, in footsteps and sunrise. But in frozen places, where snow falls like seaworts and ice grows like thought, time does something different. It stretches, it slows, it curls up like a sleeping animal and waits. These are the places where time falls asleep and the world forgets how to hurry. Imagine a valley filled with snow that never melts. Each flake that lands is a moment, a second, a breath. They pile on top of one another, but never vanish. Nothing decays, nothing moves quickly. Everything that falls stays. A leaf buried in snow today will still be there next year, perfectly preserved, cradled in ice. A footprint pressed into the frost might outlive the foot that made it. In this cold, time becomes thick, heavy, still. Glaciers are the great blankets of time. They move, yes, but so slowly that their motion feels like stillness. Beneath their surface lie the bodies of forests, the bones of animals, the dust of long-gone volcanoes, all locked away in perfect layers, sealed in a quiet that holds centuries. Scientists cut into these glaciers and pull out long cylinders of ice. Each one is a record, a frozen calendar, a library of air and ash and memory. And there are other places, deeper places, where time's sleep becomes even more profound. In permafrost, the ground never thaws. It is frozen hundreds of feet deep, a crust of sleeping earth that hasn't stirred in tens of thousands of years. Inside, seeds lie dormant. Microbes rest. Once living creatures, mammoths, woolly rhinos, are found with their fur still soft, their stomachs still full, as if they had only just fallen asleep. But they have been sleeping for ages, untouched by rot or noise or sun. In these places, decay cannot keep up with memory. A wooden tool left behind by a traveller becomes part of the land. A hut buried in snow remains as perfect as the day it was left. Even the smell of a fire, trapped in the logs of a frozen home, might still be there, waiting to be breathed again. In frozen time, nothing truly leaves. It only waits. But even more than objects, the cold holds stories, not in words but in form. A layer of soot tells of a fire. A change in the ice speaks of a sudden warmth. A strange bubble in the snow might be the breath of a hunter who passed by 1,000 winters ago. These are not fossils, they are pauses, held moments, and the earth keeps them with care. Time moves differently here because life must move differently. Animals adapt their rhythm to match the land. Bears sleep for months. Caribou migrate with the turning of light. The Arctic fox grows a coat so thick it becomes part of the snow. Nothing rushes, nothing wastes. Even the air seems slower, heavier, as if each gust must travel further to reach your cheek. People too have learned this rhythm. In the farthest reaches of the cold, communities mark days by the softness of snow, the weight of silence, the angle of light on a frozen lake. Their clocks are the stars, their calendars are the shapes of ice. They do not fight time, they rest within it, moving when the world moves, waiting when it waits. And so the frozen world becomes a place of reflection. It is not just the land that sleeps, but the very idea of urgency. There are no alarms, no deadlines, only cycles, long, slow, dependable. Even the sun obeys, rising for months, then resting for months more. It drapes the land in gold, then leaves it to silver and blue. This sleep is not empty. It is full of thought, of preparation. Beneath the ice, seeds wait. Beneath the snow, rivers prepare. Beneath the silence, stories form. And when the thaw comes, it comes slowly, like the opening of a book that has waited patiently for your hands. Time does not yawn awake. It stretches. It remembers how to move. It becomes rhythm again. In these places where time falls asleep, we are reminded of something we forget in warmer, louder lands. That slowness is not weakness. That waiting is not waste. That silence is not absence. Here, everything lives in pause, in breath, in the in-between. And perhaps, for a moment, we can live there too, not rushing, not running, but simply resting with the land as time dreams beneath the snow. The sleep of time in frozen places is not a blank silence. It is layered, rich, full of meaning folded into stillness. Each layer of snow, each line in the ice, is a page written by the earth. If you could slice through time like slicing through a cake, you would find not just dates, but events, summers and winters, storms and calms, the breath of trees, the sigh of volcanoes, even the whisper of falling stars. The frozen world does not forget, it remembers in cold. Take the permafrost, that deep, endless crust beneath northern lands. It is not just frozen soil, it is frozen memory. Every inch downward is a journey backward. 10 feet down may mean 1,000 years, 50 feet 10,000, and still deeper, the world before us, before buildings, before cities, even before writing. What lives down there is not the past. It is time itself, resting beneath our feet. Within this frozen memory, scientists have found things once thought lost. Tiny plants perfectly preserved, their colours still bright. Insects with delicate wings, trapped in the moment of motion. Mammoth bones with flesh still clinging, their fur soft enough to brush with a finger. But even more astonishing are the microbes. Bacteria that slept for tens of thousands of years, then awoke when thawed, still alive, still curious. In these beings, time truly paused. Not stopped, not ended, just held. Glaciers tell the same story, only in motion. Their layers build slowly, one snowfall at a time, pressing downward until the snow becomes ice. That ice captures air, water, particles from volcanoes, traces of plants and ash in distant deserts. Some layers are clear, others cloudy. Each one is a sentence in the story of the planet. Each one says, this is what the world felt like, in that year, in that storm, under that sun. But the sleep of time is not only beneath us, it is above us too, in the stars that shine unchanged for thousands of years. In the way the moon reflects light on a frozen field, as it did when mammoths walked through the same valley. In the constellations that guided ancient travellers across snowy plains, blinking in the same cold sky. When you lie in the snow and look up, you look not into space, but into time. Time that hasn't moved, because here it doesn't need to. And when the auroras dance, those silent green ribbons across polar nights, it is as if time sighs. The lights move, yes, but slowly, drifting like thought. They remind the sleeping world below that movement can be soft, that beauty doesn't have to shout, that change, even when it comes, can arrive with grace. The people who live in these frozen lands understand. Their calendars are carved from cold. They measure months by the length of shadows. They feel the weight of silence not as emptiness, but as fullness. A sky without sound is not lonely, it is deep. A world covered in white is not erased, it is waiting. And so they too learn to wait. They build their homes low and strong. They share stories by firelight, not to pass time but to honour it. In these stories, time is a living thing. It sleeps in the snow, it sings in the ice, it watches in the dark, and sometimes it weeps when a glacier carves into the sea, when permafrost thaws and releases the breath of ancient animals, when a once frozen lake exhales steam into the warming air. These moments are not disasters to the land, they are awakenings. The world stirring in its long slumber, unsure if it is time to rise or rest. And yet not all awakenings are gentle. As the earth warms, time's sleep is disturbed. Ice that once moved a few inches a year now races. Lakes appear where glaciers once stood. Forests march north, species retreat, and time, which once turned slowly, now spins a little faster in these lands. The snow no longer falls the same, the silence is thinner, the dreams are shorter. But even so, something in the land remembers. Beneath the new warmth, the old stillness lingers, in the roots of trees that once froze solid every winter, in the bones of animals buried in frost, in the shape of valleys carved by ice. The frozen world may shift, but its story remains written in the land, not erased, just softened. And for those who come to listen, not with ears but with patience, there is still so much to hear. Sit on a snowy hill at dusk, watch the light fade across the frozen field, feel the cold on your skin, close your eyes, and you may feel it, the slow pulse of the world at rest, the breath of a planet wrapped in sleep, the memory of a time when time itself lay down and dreamed. There is a final kind of silence that only comes when something ends gently, without struggle. In the frozen world, time does not crash to a halt. It settles. It folds itself neatly into snowdrifts. It nestles into the rings of old trees. It sighs into the layers of ice that line the hearts of glaciers. When time falls asleep here, it does not dream of waking. It dreams of being held. Spring begins to press its fingers into the corners of the snow. The sun stretches longer across the sky. Shadows grow shorter, streams crack open, and cold water begins to speak again. But the pace is unhurried. The world remembers the sleep it just came from. The meltwater carries memories with it, fragments of leaves that never crumbled, pollen that never drifted, the breath of ancient forests locked away in bubbles of air. As the ice gives way, it offers these things gently, as if returning borrowed stories. In the thawing soil, seeds stir, not with suddenness, but with quiet knowledge. They have waited through months of cold, listening to the hush of frost above them. Now, touched by warmth and moisture, they begin to remember their instructions. They reach upward, not with desperation, but with calm, as if they always knew this moment would arrive. Animals rise too. Bears stretch in their dens, blinking into the light, their dreams still wrapped around them. Frogs thaw where they had frozen solid. Insects crawl from the soil, shaking off layers of sleep. And in the forests, creatures move slowly at first, as if unsure whether the world is truly waking, or whether this is just another dream. There is no rush. The frozen land has taught them patience. But as everything stirs, the old sleep remains, not as something left behind, but as something carried forward. The trees grow with it. The rivers flow with it. Even the wind remembers. It moves through the thawing branches with a softness shaped by winter. There are no sharp edges yet. The world is still being careful. It is still holding the hush of time inside its breath. And in the places where the thaw has not yet reached, on the high peaks, in the shaded valleys, in the deep cores of glaciers, time still sleeps. It is not forgotten. It is not broken. It is simply slower. And in being slower, it becomes something rare. A kind of honesty the modern world rarely sees. A reminder that not all things must move quickly to matter. That some things grow better in stillness. That life at its most profound often begins in the quiet. Scientists return to these places again and again. They measure. They study. They drill deep into the ice to hear the stories still being whispered. They find new layers, new records, new surprises frozen in place, and every year they learn something that reshapes what we thought we knew. But even they, with all their instruments and theories, admit that the deeper they go, the more it feels like they are entering a kind of cathedral, a place where the past has gathered not to speak, but to simply exist. And maybe that is what frozen time teaches us best, that being here is enough, that not everything needs to be unwrapped, or solved, or hurried, that some things, like dreams or memories or long winters, exist just to be felt. As the last of the snow melts and green returns to the land, the frozen time does not vanish. It lingers in the way the sun glows off wet stone, in the way footsteps sound softer on thawed earth, in the way animals pause longer before moving on. The rhythm of ice and snow has entered them, changed them, made them slower in the best way. The pace of stillness stays in their bones. And so even when summer comes, with its buzzing insects and quick-growing grass, the sleep of time remains, not in the land anymore, but in the memory of the land, in the hush behind the birdsong, in the pause between breezes, in the softness that stays in our thoughts when we remember the cold. For some, these frozen places may seem lonely, empty, but they are full of breath held for centuries, full of stories too patient to be told in words, full of time resting in its own perfect shape. And when we visit, if we are quiet, if we are willing to wait, we may feel it too. Not the rush of clocks or the march of calendars, but the deep, slow, peaceful truth that time can rest, that stillness can teach, and that somewhere beneath the snow, the world is still dreaming. Long after skin has vanished, long after the breath has faded, the bones remain. They do not speak in voices, but they carry stories, silent, steady, and unchanged. In cold places, these bones last longer. They rest beneath frost, wrapped in snow and silence, preserved by the very stillness that surrounds them. While the world above changes, the bones remember. They remember the cold. In the far north, where winters stretch for half the year and ice presses into the soil like a slow tide, bones lie quietly beneath layers of time. Some belong to wolves, some to caribou, some to people who once walked the tundra wrapped in furs and firelight. They are not scattered, they are settled, as if even in death they listen to the rhythm of snow. The cold does not erase the body, it protects it. It keeps the oils from turning, it slows decay to a whisper. Muscles shrink, skin darkens, hair stiffens, but the bones remain almost untouched. Their marrow may be gone, but the shape, the lines, the marks left by tools or teeth or time, they are still there, carved into silence. In permafrost, entire skeletons are preserved in position, still curled in sleep. Mammoths lie with their trunks folded. Wolves rest mid-step. Birds, feathers frozen flat against their ribs, seem ready to lift off once more. These remains are not ruins, they are memories, held not by monuments or books, but by the cold. And the bones do more than just wait, they speak if you know how to listen. To an archaeologist's hand, a crack in a femur tells of a fall, a groove in a tooth tells of hunger, a healed break tells of care, of community, of another who stayed nearby. These are not only the stories of individuals, they are the stories of the cold itself, of how it shaped life, bent it, sharpened it, and preserved what it left behind. Some bones are ancient, older than memory, older than history. They lie deep beneath glacial fields, under layers of compressed snow and ice. They have watched millennia pass without blinking. They were there when forests became tundra, when oceans froze and retreated, when people first arrived carrying fire, and yet they have not changed. Their silence is strong, their stillness is truth. Even now, as glaciers retreat and permafrost softens, bones rise again. They appear from the thaw like forgotten thoughts. A child stumbles on a jawbone. A hunter finds a tusk in the meltwater. Scientists gather them gently, brush away soil that has held its breath for thousands of years, and with each rib, each tooth, each tiny finger bone, a world is remembered. But bones are not only found beneath the earth, they are carried still in the animals that live in the cold, in the people who call the Arctic home. Their skeletons are shaped by wind, by hunger, by patience. Polar bears with shoulder blades like shields, foxes with long spines built for silent travel. Humans with strong hips and narrow feet built for walking far across snow. These bones, though living, still carry the cold. They have learned to bend without breaking, to move without wasting, to rest without fear. And in every skull, in every spine, in every hollow chamber of the ribs, the cold still sings. It echoes through the marrow, a song of adaptation, of survival. It tells of nights so long the stars felt permanent, of days when frostbite kissed the edge of every breath. The cold shaped these bodies, not cruelly, but with purpose. It carved them into what was needed. It made them remember. Fires were built to warm these bones, blankets woven, homes carved from snow and stone, and even as hands and hearts changed, the bones held the record. They do not forget the bite of the wind, the weight of the fur, the creak of frozen joints. The skeleton, silent and unseen, tells the story of every winter that came before. And so, in the frost-bound corners of the earth, bones lie quietly beneath the surface, some dead, some living, all listening, to the snow above, to the ice within, to the history held between the spaces where warmth once lived. These bones do not shout, they do not rise, they simply wait. They wait for eyes that can read their quiet, for fingers that know how to trace the shape of a story in silence, for a world willing to slow down enough to understand what the cold has asked it never to forget. Let us follow the story deeper now, down into the layers where bones sleep beneath the snow. Down where the cold doesn't just preserve, but shapes what remains. Here, in the quiet earth, the bones become part of the land itself, woven into frozen soil, pressed against stone, touched by time, so gently it feels like breath. They do not resist, they settle, and in that settling they keep their stories. In the Arctic tundra, where the wind has no trees to catch its voice, bones are some of the oldest landmarks. A rib cage half buried in moss, a spine rising from thawing ground like a question, a tusk arching upward toward the sky, still strong after 10,000 years. These are not ruins, they are echoes. Their shapes cast long shadows at sunset, and animals step around them, as if even the living understand that this is something sacred. Each bone tells a different kind of story. A heavy femur, worn at the ends, speaks of a life spent walking far. A skull with grooves across the crown tells of antlers grown and lost, year after year. A tooth, cracked and stained, holds the memory of hard winters and frozen meals, and when bones are found together, scattered or nestled, broken or whole. They whisper of companionship, of struggle, of how the cold shapes not just bodies, but relationships. In permafrost, the preservation is so precise that even the smallest things are held. The curl of an ear, the leathery texture of frozen skin, the braided fur of a sleeping fox. Scientists uncover these bones and remains with brushes, not shovels, afraid to break what has waited so long. They lean close, not to conquer, but to listen. And when they study the rings in tusks, the isotopes in teeth, the healed fractures and patterns of wear, they begin to see a truth. The cold does not erase life. It remembers it in full. But bones do not just rest in the ground. In frozen places, they become part of the world above too. In many Arctic cultures, bones have long been used as tools, as structure, as stories. Whale bones form the frames of houses. Caribou antlers are carved into knives and sleds. Ribs become roof beams. The skeleton is not hidden away. It is honoured, carried forward, woven into life. In this way, bones are not a symbol of death, they are a sign of memory. Even today, those who live closest to the cold keep this memory alive. Hunters know where to find the old bone beds, places where animals return to die for generations. Children are taught how to tell a fresh bone from one that has waited through a dozen winters. Elders speak of the bones beneath the riverbank, beneath the sea ice, beneath the mountain shadow. They tell these stories slowly, with long pauses, as if giving time for the bones to listen too. And sometimes bones return. As glaciers retreat and the earth warms, the past rises. Mammoths emerge, still curled as if asleep. Tools made of bone appear in riverbanks. Skulls once hidden beneath meters of ice now lie open to the wind. These are not accidents. They are messages. The world is shifting, and in its shift, it is returning its oldest memories to the surface. Not to be forgotten again, but to be understood. Even the bones inside us carry this memory. Our knees ache in the cold because they remember old pressure. Our backs tighten in wind because they remember shelter once needed. We are shaped by those who walked before us, by the cold they endured, by the fires they built, by the shelters they carved from snow and stone. Our bones carry their weight, not just of time, but of place, of weather, of adaptation. And in the shape of our skeletons, long spines, curved ribs, hands built for grasping and building and holding, we see the echo of a movement through snow, of climbing through ice, of making warmth with others. The cold did not only shape our past, it shaped our very form. And maybe that is the truest story the bones tell, that we are not separate from the cold, that we were born in it, changed by it, carried forward by it, that in every frozen breath, in every snow-covered path, we are walking not away from the past, but through it. Bones remind us that life leaves marks, that silence can hold memory, that the cold, though quiet, writes its story not in firelight or ink, but in calcium and curve and time. And when we listen to the bones, not just with science but with reverence, we hear not only the past, but a promise that nothing is truly lost, that what once lived leaves behind shape, and that shape can teach, it can guide, it can speak across centuries. All we must do is slow down enough to listen. Snow falls gently over the land, covering everything in a soft hush. Beneath it, bones rest, not as remains, but as memory made solid. They lie where time left them, shaped by wind, shaped by life, shaped by cold. Even in their stillness, they continue to speak. The last part of the story is always the quietest, not because it has less to say, but because it trusts you're still listening. Bones don't demand, they reveal. A rib pressed into the soil shows where the body once breathed. A jawbone tells of hunger. A spine curled in the earth speaks of rest. These moments become poems written in shape, not sound. And as the snow melts and the earth softens, some of these bones rise again. They are not disturbed, they are welcomed back, picked up, studied, held. Their weight is light, but their meaning is deep. We hold them like relics, and in them we see not just what was lost, but what survived. Because bones don't only remember cold, they remember warmth. They remember firelight and hands and stories told in circles. They remember movement, struggle, comfort. They remember us. And when we look at them closely, we remember ourselves, not as creatures passing through, but as part of the same slow rhythm that moves through frost and thaw and back again. The cold does not forget, and neither do the bones. Even now they rest with purpose, listening, waiting, remembering the cold so that we don't have to carry it alone.